YouTube. 1 second.
Yeah, and sorry again about the Google Meet thing. I'll look at the other
No
invites that I made
worries.
and make sure that that's not happening with those two.
What the fuck?
Fix it. God damn it.
Audience.
Wait, are we live?
Not yet. Are we?
Oh, okay.
No, I think
I saw the
Oh.
live stream.
Maybe we
pop up.
are
I
now.
think we are.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
then
we're
we're live, and I got everybody ready to go so we can roll. Okay,
Oh, wait.
let's
Yes.
do it. Let's give
We are
Aliens a
definitely
love
live.
fest. Let's love the shit out of this movie.
Even though you hate it?
You're passionate.
It's fake news.
Good thing.
Andrew Tate would disagree.
That fucking guy.
Are we ready?
Fucking guy.
All right. Welcome to Perfect Organism, the Alien Saga podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Prater, and I'm joined by my co-hosts.
Patrick Green.
Harry Chicos.
And Geek Girl?
Holden Wilhoit.
Micah Green.
Mario Benvenuto.
And Kyle June.
Wow,
That was
could have thought of it all
astonishing how-
That was
years.
gorgeous, you
How
guys.
neat that
Amazing.
was. That was
Yeah.
So
neat.
proud.
I
Loved
want to
it.
everyone.
Chat.
In the chat too.
What's up, everybody? And a quick apology. Micah and I are on vacation at the moment, and we don't have our recording equipment, so we're going to sound a little shitty, a little shittier than normal.
Boy, his audience,
But,
his audio sucks.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm the most like anal about audio like you'll ever meet. So this whole time I'm like, oh my god, I know this sounds bad, but you know what? It doesn't matter because this movie's so much fun to talk about. I could sound like a mooing cow, and I might, and it won't even matter. Before we get started, let's do the patrons quick. So going back a little bit here, we got Matt Thomas, Shara Multivac, Andrew Tracy, Zachary Eastrom, Larry Wood, and Nick, who just joined at the Ovomorph level. And we're really grateful to you guys. If you go to perfectorganism.com/support, you can sign up there and get lots of free exclusive stuff. As well as if you sign at the $12 level, you get producer access, which has just been crazy. There was a producer meetup that you're going to hear about shortly, and lots of other exciting stuff. So all that being said, I'll hand it back over to Jamie to kind of get us rolling.
So this is one of our many episodes that we have planned for the 40th anniversary of Aliens. As of yesterday, which was July 18th, that was the U.S. premiere of Aliens 40 years ago. There was, of course, premieres all over the world, but in the U.S. it was 40 years ago. So we're here to celebrate it, to talk about what we love, talk about some hot takes, some crazy opinions, but just heap love on a movie that keeps on giving.
Yeah, and if you're listening and if you haven't seen it, I sent out a questionnaire. I got over 50 responses, so thank you for everyone who responded. It was a lot of fun reading through it and compiling it and kind of just seeing overall trends and some really interesting hot takes, some funny stories. So as we go through, we'll just mention some of the ones that stood out to us. And if you didn't get a chance to and you still want to, I would love to like ultimately compile something to send out to you guys just to see what what everyone thinks. I mean, I know we have the internet, but it's funny when people are asked specifically about things, what their opinions are. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's spread the love.
Well, I'll just start with what I've been thinking about with Aliens, and I always go back to this film and I just think what a miracle it is, and how we talk about the characters all the time. I've been posting a lot of character posts on Facebook and some on Reddit, primarily from Aliens, but from other films as well. But just why this film works, and we've talked about that before, why it stands the test of time, why it's such an incredible sequel, and we can understand all of the reasons. And really, I think it comes down to character, but it's still something for me that is almost unthinkable. How magical it is, how powerful it is, and how unique it is as a story. Even though, again, as we've discussed in episodes past, it does repeat some things that we've seen in Alien, but it does it to brilliant effect. And again, it's the movie that people. It's like the movie that people talk about still. It's the only film that people talk about the way they talk about it in this saga, and it's just amazing. And I'm still trying to understand how James Cameron wrote that script and how he directed a movie like this. So I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, I think people like to use the term lightning in a bottle talking about this movie. Like you hear it a billion times, especially watching docs like Aliens Expanded and stuff. But I've always felt like that's a little bit reductive of the work that actually went into this film. Like it took blood, sweat, tears, training, fights with crew members, you know. And it's just this film is just a testament to a lot of artists, a lot of wonderful people who put a lot of very intentional choices and everything into this film. Like there's so much talent just packed on the screen all the time. And then behind the camera, you know, you got James Cameron, Galen Hurd, um, two of the greatest filmmakers of all time, you know. And it's such a special movie. I can't really name maybe one or two other films, but I can't really name anything else off the top of my head that has this level of quality to it, this level of realism to it. Like it's just like the first Alien, you know, it feels like you could step through the screen and live in that world. And there's so much wonderful artistry and care for the characters and the acting just packed into it. It's such an amazing film.
Something I was thinking about is how much a product of its time it is, and how complicated a product of its time as a phrase becomes. Because when you look at the first three movies, especially, like they are archetypal products of the environments in which they were created, right? Alien is the exact 70s cinema verite treatment of science fiction. Aliens is the action blockbuster with heart and optimism of Alien. And then Alien 3 is like the nihilist kind of Gen X, rejecting authority kind of alien film. And that is really interesting. And for a long time, the 80s adjectives that I just described were kind of looked at as pejorative, you know? I feel like especially in light of like the sort of 90s and 2000s movement back towards something more realist, something a little less full of hope, something bleaker. Being kind of 80s was looked at as like a bad thing because it was sort of this like, oh, it's cheesy, you know? And it's funny how in my lifetime, like that has flipped and it's now become a compliment in a lot of ways when something feels like an 80s movie because I think we miss that sense of like imagination and optimism and escapism in our popular cinema, you know? I think audiences continue to go to Aliens because it does for them now what it did for audiences back in the 80s, which is it gives us a story of ultimately hope in the face of adversity. And when we look at like the legacy of the Alien series, that's really not what people talk about. Like people talk about that it's scary or that it's like bleak or that it's, um, hard to watch. You know, people talk about how scared they were when they saw, the films for the first time. But very few people talk about hope and optimism. And Aliens to this day is really the only one that does that. Like Aliens to this day is the one that when you put it on, it gives you faith in humanity. And as I've been kind of dwelling on that, I've been thinking how wild it is. Again, that a film that subverts like almost everything about the first movie, like it is really the opposite of Alien, even though it repeats beats and things, and even though it obviously has, quote unquote xenomorphs in it and stuff, like it really is just it's so antithetical to it. It is about numbers, it's about teams, it's about, hives, everything is totally different. And thematically it's totally different too, because Alien is about like everything's been stripped away and you're going to die alone in space. And Aliens is about like we're going to work together to like fight against the coming night. And still somehow it works just as well as Alien does, and in some ways works better than Alien. And it's looked at like, I mean, nobody out there today looks at Aliens as like an inadequate prequel. Even people who aren't as crazy about it still look at it as like clearly it's of the same level of quality and like caliber and legacy as the first film, even if you might not be like an Aliens person. And that is an amazing, lasting achievement. And I think you see it all over the comments that people wrote in with, which we're going to kind of be filtering in throughout this and some of the audio things you're going to hear later. But also, it's just you can tell because every time we post anything from Aliens, the fans go crazy. Like our posts blow up. I mean, you post a Colonial Marine, that thing gets 10,000 shares on Facebook. Like it's crazy. They are absolutely part of the DNA of our fandom, and I think in a lot of ways the DNA of our culture writ large. And I think Aliens is a wonderful testament to why it being called a quote unquote 80s film is actually a compliment in a lot of ways today.
just repetitive. But um, can you guys hear me? Okay, sorry. I got a little flashy thing that said my internet wasn't stable. Anyway, after seeing Alien for the first time and being completely floored by the xenomorph and the creature and the story and how scary it was and how nihilist and real, like we were just talking about, seeing Aliens was a return to form for me personally because I'm a kid who grew up with Indiana Jones and Star Wars and those types of movies that just make you feel good and excited and like you're just in it with them, and you want the good guys to win, and then they do, and it's amazing. And then with Aliens, the thing that keeps me coming back, and we've talked about this before, is that this is where Ripley becomes a hero, truly, when she decides to do what she does. Like from the moment that she decides to even go on a mission like this, after having experienced such a terrible thing that she has literal PTSD from it, she missed the whole life of her daughter because of it. She's choosing to go and help save these people that she doesn't know on this planet. And these steps that she takes are like these big grand strides to her becoming the iconic Ripley that no one will ever forget. Um, and yeah, I literally have chills just talking about this movie. It's magic. That's the best way you can put it. It's just magic. Everyone who made the movie was so passionate about making it the way that they all seem to kind of come together and see it. And it feels that way. Everyone committed and it came out the way it did because of this. And I think we're just so lucky to have a film like that, especially as a part of a franchise that is kind of based and grounded in horror. I think it's amazing to have a film that's so action packed, so quotable, and just so beautiful in the story of someone becoming a true hero in the way that Ripley does.
Yeah, I just want to riff off. You mentioning Indiana Jones, and Patrick talking about the sort of hopefulness of the 80s. I think at that time, and I know in decades later, and I'm going to mention Spielberg, he was often criticized for being over sentimental. And for me, Cameron is even more sentimental. I think the two of them have that kind of nailed down as their thing. And for me, that is their greatest strength. It's always looked at as a pejorative. And it's these films, the ones that we talk about, the ones that we truly love from them are their most sentimental, are their most heartfelt, the ones that we connect to. And as we go through 4 decades now of, pop culture and just the world at large, going through these stages of optimism and then, something like 9/11 where it all just comes crashing down again and we go through these waves. And right now, obviously, we're in a lot of turmoil. I think these are the films that we will always go back to. They might not be as sort of dark or nihilistic or have, that sort of cool factor in that way, but they're the ones that we will always return to. They're the ones we put on in the background when we had a bad day. And they're the ones that'll continue to make us feel good for the very reason that you all have just been saying. The work, the love that went into this, the acting, the characters, everybody brought everything they had. And, it's just the combination of that I will continue to go back to. I love the sentimentality. I love the optimism. I love the hope from this film.
I think what's great too is Aliens was something that like our generations growing up watching this created just like permanent memories of like feelings of things like Andy, to your point of you're watching this film and you're feeling some type of way or something happened to you in your personal life, and this movie makes you feel better about that or feel more braver about that thing, or just like getting through maybe whatever hardship or stress or whatever. And then as a child too, you're seeing it as this thing that maybe it's like this taboo film that you shouldn't be watching at the time. Like we talk to people about that all the time, and they see it like way younger than they should have, or they heard it from friends, and you watch it at a sleepover, things like that being like your first memory of that, right? And so carrying that through as you grow up and you watch other movies and you see other movies within this franchise and things like that. Aliens holds like such a special place in that way because I feel like the story and what just that depiction of art that you visually are watching just did something to you, just held and created such a special spark or lightning in a bottle to what Holden said as well. And not that the other films didn't do that either, but for some reason you have like when I was a kid, if like Alien 3 was on TV, that and my dad is like working in the kitchen or we're doing something like Alien 3 wasn't the movie that he like just kept on or like stopped and was like to keep and just like left on and was like I saw this post on Instagram the other day around this someone said uh tell me a scene of a film that makes you lock in, right? Which means like you just stop doing whatever you're doing and you're like, oh, I'm gonna watch this for like the next 10 minutes. Um, you know, and that was Hudson, Hicks, Ripley, they're all in the room and the power goes out. It's the red lighting and the aliens are in the ceiling, right? Um, I remember moments like that, like watching with my parents or like, summer day in the living room and my dad's home or something like that. And Aliens was on TV. And then we both would just kind of like stop whatever, like maybe he was going to go out and mow the lawn and he's like, no, that can wait for like 10 minutes because I want to like see this scene or something. Or you want to like enjoy this magical moment of this art form that you watch. And for Cameron and Gala and Hurd and all the actors and everyone involved in this to create such a cool experience like that. You just don't seem to get that in movies as much anymore, or just like the art form as it's changed in a way. And so there's that nostalgic aspect to it. There's everything like that, but it's just like these core memories and feelings that informed like your identity as a person that I think Aliens created for a lot of us and carried with us. And I mean, you read through the survey responses, it's all right there, right? Like you can see that the subtext of all of that is in there. And it's just such a beautiful thing and why we keep coming back to it and just having this complete love for it, It's beautiful.
Can I go through some, like there are some examples of what you were saying about people's like relationship with this film. One of the questions was, any anecdotes or things, memories that you share. A lot of them were like one, for example, and I think we feel this way because we call her Space Mom. But one was about how this movie showed me what a real mom was. Sophie wrote this in, and she says she considers Sigourney Weaver like her real mom. And now that she has a daughter of her own, she's her new, and she's like, I will do anything to protect her. And I think for a lot of people of Gen X generation as well, and beyond, I'm not just, laying claim to it. Um, but for many of us, not me, but for many of us, we had absent parents or we had to come home to an empty house and we're latchkey kids. And I think for many people, Sigourney was like a mother to her, protective, never gonna leave her, and there's a comfort in that. And there were a lot of comments like that, either about that or bonding. Like my family and I bond over this. I saw it with my grandparents. I saw it with my dad. This movie lends itself to that experience of sharing what it means to be a family because there's so many familial themes in this and protection, and I think it just feels safe. So, yeah, I really enjoyed reading all of those comments too because some of them I identified with, some of them were funny, but they all kind of shared that same sort of collective heart.
Can I read one quick from
Yeah.
um this is from Chris Morris. He said, "The week before middle school started, I went to get my back to school haircut. I told the lady I wanted a haircut like Hicks from Aliens. This was pre-internet and she had never seen the movie, but said to describe him, I was like, well, he's a space marine. And she was like, oh, you want a military cut? And I was like, yeah, basically, not really understanding that Hicks, like his hair wasn't standard military issue. So she gave him his first buzz cut. And 3 days before starting middle school, which, we all know, he says was mildly traumatizing. So you all know how that is like, right? But it's just like, that's just a memory that this person has, that's a forever memory for this. And it's just, we all can relate to something like that. But it's just so great that like this film created that experience for for Chris. And it's just like, we'd all have moments like that where you're seeing, you're just, you're taking in this cinematic art piece and you don't know what it means to you. You're a kid and your brain can't fathom like all of these certain things, right? But there's something inside of you that makes you feel like you look up to these people or this story, or you want to be like this person, right? And you don't have the wisdom or the life experience yet to really understand what that truly is. And so like that, just another piece of it, Andy, to your point, like it's just it's just so great that this film brings us that, and it's lands in this franchise, and it's this movie that you can have like this roller coaster of emotions within this franchise, especially within the first three films, right? Like Alien, very horror driven, scary, adrenaline rush, like things like that. And then Aliens feels like home, really brings you back. There are elements of that, Patrick, to your point, that hit on those same takes, those same beats, but in a different way, in a way that just makes you want to feel like a badass, and you want to be courageous and you want to be a good person and you want to embody that stylistically, the themes and ideas that Hicks brings to his character, and for Sigourney to be like another the version of a mom to somebody who grows up without that. Like it's just so, again, it's just such a beautiful um a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful butterfly, Barry.
It is.
No one
It-
told me that.
I
Thank
loved
you.
that haircut story.
Oh my
I
God,
love
it's
I
perfect.
laughed so
Thank
hard
you.
when I read that because we all have a memory of getting a buzz cut. I feel like that's like a universal rite of passage, at least for boys in like the 90s, was getting a buzz cut at some
Yes.
point in the summer and then
Yes.
coming back to school bald and being like, oh, this did
I
not look
hate
as
me
good
when
as I thought it was gonna look.
Yeah.
Aw.
And then you bleached your hair after that. Once it came back, then
Yeah, and then got the frosted
Frost those
tips.
tips.
Frosted
Yeah.
tips,
Oh.
Yep, yep, yep.
The equivalent in the 80s for girls was the really bad perm, which kind of looked like like Ripley's like short like it was kind of the equivalent for
Which is
sure.
funny because now that's like the haircut every boy wants
the
to get
wolf-
in high school. So it's
Wolf
it's all
cut.
it's all a cycle.
Fashion
I
is
want to
cyclic.
I want to say for me for like Aliens, I think the most important part about it is that it takes so much from the first film. Like if you would have just had Alien and not Aliens right afterwards, I think we'd be looking at that like like how the Thing gets looked at. Like oh, and I know they had a second movie, but it doesn't hit the same way as Aliens does a few years later, where you kind of look at Alien as this like one-off film that was so great back in the 70s and can still be talked about today. But instead you get this sequel that's so different, but also it blows up the universe of Alien. Now you're getting comic books, you're getting Colonial Marines, you're getting my favorite logo of all time that I'll probably get a tattoo of this point is that Weyland-Yutani logo. That's just like so menacing and corporate, and then you get all that from Aliens. The set and props are my favorite from not only the franchise but of any movie of all time. The pulse rifle, the power loader. I think we were talking about it when me, Andy, and Kyle and the rest of us went to the movie theater. Of just like the sound design of the whole movie is like if you're watching the whole thing on mute, you know what that sound is like from the pulse rifle and stuff like that. But just to take everything from the first movie and blow it up and really put Aliens in that Hollywood bracket of like this is the franchise like moving forward and just give us all those extra things, I think is just super important. And then it this movie also feels like my friend. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but just like you're watching it and just like you're hanging out with your buddy. Like no one even has to be there. It's just like it's so familiar to me at this point. And I think every time Hudson gets pulled down, it just like I shake my head, just like you're saying like goodbye to a friend almost as well when he gets pulled into the grate. And it kind of gets me in my feels every time I watch it.
So like I think seeing Aliens in theaters, which I think is a great segue to this, Andy and Mario, like what I noticed of not seeing it, I watched it last year, not too long ago, but like seeing it in theaters, I have like this false memory that I think I saw it in theaters when they did, and when I was like 10. I don't know if this is real or not, but I feel like I did. But regardless if it was like a showing, whatever, I think seeing it the other day, literally like 3 days ago, it create what I'm noticing this time is that it just creates immense joy. I know it's a very like generalized statement almost, but it's a very joyful film for how dark it is. And it is, as Perry, you were saying, like this roller coaster of emotion, right? That keeps, changing every single time you see it. But I think what draws people to it is that you're getting a constant dopamine rush. You're getting the one-liners. You're getting these different beats that do, like, if you really analyze it, it is mirroring Alien, but it's like you don't get that from Alien, and I love Alien, but like the film in Alien is much a slow burn. Same with Alien 3, and like in a different way, more dismal, obviously, but it like Aliens you can put on in the background. And you can put, I guess, the other films in the background, but I don't think it's going to hit the same way as hearing just anything that's going on in Aliens. Like when you hear a door open in Aliens, you know what part it is. You know that you're in, you hear the loader, it's like, they're, loading things, they're and right. But like regardless, I just think yeah,
That's so funny.
Nice, Kyle. Nice. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
They're loading things.
Oh, they're loading things.
Sorry, everyone. But no,
Love it.
it creates a lot of joy. I think that's what this film does. And what was interesting seeing it as a collective, in a movie theater, no, it seemed like nobody was talking the whole time. Nobody had any banter. Everyone was locked in. Everyone wanted to watch this movie who was there. I don't think there was one person there who was like dreading going to this, even if it was their first time. And I think that is a testament to it. And what was very fascinating to all of us that was there, including the two producers, Eric and Ali, shout out, was people laughed at a lot of scenes that we didn't think would be laughed. And I laughed at things that I didn't realize was funny until like just seeing it again in theaters, which does, kind of change over time. Like I think seeing a film can be funny eventually, even if it's not supposed to be. So yeah, I think, that was an incredible experience. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about, first of all, I loved seeing it in the theater. This was my first time. This is my favorite movie of all time, and I had never seen it in the theater. And I loved every second. But the MC, when he was introducing it, asked who had never seen it, and there were quite a few hands. I want to say at least like 8 or 10 people, young people. I think it was, younger generations that were taken by their parents. But everyone was locked in, and the moments that I found myself laughing along with everybody or being in the moment were the unexpected ones. It was often not directly what Hudson says, but it was always what people were saying to Hudson. It was a lot of like Hicks yelling at Hudson that got the laughs. It was that scene right before like the nuke 'em, nuke the site from orbit. It was just a lot of laughs of Burke insulting Hicks or like no offense. It was like more subtle. And then there were like knowing smiles with the game over with the like really popular ones. Which if And going over the questionnaire too, one of the questions was, what's your favorite line? What's your, like, with the best line delivery? And the variety of responses, I think, more so than the actual responses themselves, is a testament to this film. Out of 50 something answers, there were like 31 different quotes, which to me is insane that a movie has that many. The number one was, of course, Get Away from Her, You Bitch. But then my favorite, number two, was Did IQs Drop Sharply While I Was Away, which also got a big laugh in the theater. Um, and then just all of them, like some of the classics, but then some like subtle one. One person just wrote like, I love when Ripley just says, God damn it, like just her delivery. So to me too, what makes it infinitely like our friend, like you were saying, Mario, is that's what we do with our friends, right? We have personal jokes. We have lines that we say to each other that we only say to one particular friend. And that's what makes it feel so communal. So it really was a lot of fun. I highly recommend seeing it in the theater at some point at a random showing because it's everybody's locked in. Everybody wants to be there. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
When I was,
well, just some quick.
Go ahead.
Hudson, got a lot of call outs for the quotability, right? Like people said, he's us, and every single line is quotable. He's our gauge for how things are going in the states. The state of the Marines' morale is written on his face, and Paxton played him perfectly. I think to Andy's point, like a character like Hudson's a great case study in why Aliens is so great. Even if you look at it just from the perspective, from like the standpoint of analyzing that one character, he has an arc. He's played beautifully. He has layers, and his dialogue is so interesting and memorable that it's basically everyone who watches the movie twice remembers what he's going to say the second time they see it. What other movie is like that? I mean, he has a lot of dialogue in this thing, and yet, I mean, you can hear him specifically, Bill Paxton, like saying it. It's like they embedded so much of their personalities into these characters, and what's crazy is like other movies do that too, but there's something about Aliens. There's something about the camaraderie and the chemistry, and I think a lot of it is how they brought so much of themselves to it by decorating things on their own and by bringing their own things to the rehearsals and to the training and stuff. I just something about the indelibility of the dialogue in Aliens is really special. In a decade of quotable movies, right? In a decade of Arnold one-liners and of, people remembering famous quotes and, Aliens is to me still easily the most quotable movie of I've ever seen. And also I think the most quotable movie most people I talk to have seen. I mean, you say Aliens and instantly you have a scene playing in your head and you know what they're saying in the scene. And that's amazing. And Hudson, for a character who is on his face so kind of ridiculous in a lot of ways, like never comes across like a caricature. And I just don't know what that is. I thought about it a lot. I'm like, I think if that happened with a different actor, it would have been stupid. I think if that movie came out today, we would have been like, this is a completely unbelievable person. But in the context of Aliens and Bill Hudson, of Bill Paxton's performance, he somehow reads like a real person in spite of, no, not in spite of, because of his idiosyncrasies. And those idiosyncrasies are the things that make this movie feel so human.
I think a lot of the, like, especially the Marines, a lot of those people feel like people that we've probably worked with at some point. There's a lot of like archetypes and stereotypes, but it's not like past the realm of believability, like you were saying. They don't feel like caricatures. They feel exaggerated, but I know a lot of exaggerated people. So, I think a lot of these characters feel so much like larger than life and they feel like people you can look up to. But kind of like what you said, Patrick, you got characters like Dutch from Predator or John Rambo, like these characters are huge and everybody loves them, but they don't feel like someone you could sit down and have a beer with or someone you could even just have a conversation with. Like it's all of these actors brought so much like believability to the roles. It's just amazing.
I think as well, I think about the original trilogy and all of those films, even when I was younger and I was watching them, I remember, you'd walk into, like for me, I'd walk into a communal living room and someone or people would be watching like Alien or Alien 3, and it was like, quiet down. Like it was important. What we're watching is important. And I think these films, specifically Aliens, of course, but these films came out in a time when directors and writers were really given um, license or permission to really tell the stories that they want to tell. Film wasn't, of course, film was business and it was commerce as well. And they wanted films to make money, but it's very different than it is now, where films and shows are commerce first and maybe art second, unless you happen to work for Apple, who really understands what art is and how art is made. But I think about myself and the Ripley and Aliens, and I think even like I know what I have had women on pedestals in part because I know who Ellen Ripley is. And I see her in my mother, and I see her in my friends. And so I'm an aggressive feminist because of Ellen Ripley, because I know what women are capable of, because I know that women don't need men, because women can lead without saying that they have to lead, because I've seen characters like Hicks who can support someone like Ellen Ripley without dialogue, without having a conversation. It just happens in real life because we're people. And you can see in people what their potential. And he knew right away when he met Ripley that she had what it took. And of course, there's plenty of men like Gorman who didn't have what it took. And Gorman had to step aside. And the beauty of that, and we've discussed that before, just the unspokenness of the characters in that film, how like when Gorman came out of, he had the bandage around his head and he's like, look, Ripley. And she's like, don't worry about her. She goes, forget it. And she moved on. That's all they had to say. It didn't have to be this whole expositional, I'm sorry, blah, 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 blah. They just knew. They knew. He knew she was capable. She knew he wasn't capable. And they started, they continued on with the rest of the story. But I also, when I think of Aliens and that time in history where collectively as a world culture, we were coming out of the Vietnam War. Women were still, coming through, the women's rights movement and, able to get, it was like had been 11 years since women were able to get bank accounts on their own, where all of these things were happening. And I think those films, a lot of them, they were hope because the world was changing in such a dynamic and positive ways. Even though dark things were happening, it's almost like in some ways, like the hope of the 50s, even though the 50s weren't this great time for women and for a lot of people, there was this sense of hope and optimism of the future. And I feel like the 80s is a version of the 50s, just flipped on its head a little bit. And these films were important. I feel like the most successful alien films are films that feel important to me, films that feel like, we need to pay attention because they're saying something that can speak to us. The best art for me does that. And I even think about like the X-Files and things that were happening like in the early 90s, and things were kind of coming out and how everything was a statement on what was going on in the world. And Aliens is that perfectly. And to what everyone is saying, Patrick and Holden, like it was lightning in a bottle. It was alchemy. And I don't think we could ever see that again in that way. But I definitely think, certainly with what's going on in the world right now, if an artist or director or a writer is given permission to tell a good story, I think that we could see that again, just in a different way.
Yeah, the question about characters and just like who's your favorite, I really wanted the why and the trends I noticed. So Hicks was the favorite, and pretty much every comment across the board, and what we've talked about for so many times with him was, his gentleness, his attentiveness, his concern, compassion. People were like, I wanted to be him. And most of these were from men. And I want to be as cool and in control. His aura is infinite. That's a quote. It's just this lovely testament to, I think, what men really want to be and didn't have a lot of. We still don't have a lot of characters like him. We talked about that. We had to like struggle to figure out, think of Aragorn. But that was the overall consensus with him. With Bishop, there was a lot of love for Bishop too. And it was more about being misunderstood and about being judged. And not and people not being able to read them. And I think that's what a lot of people are feeling now today too, especially with the internet and communication just being, so misconstrued and they loved his sort of gentleness, but also like his being misunderstood and him turning out to be good in the end when he didn't come across that way. With Vasquez, it was all about her power and her strength and her badassery, which we all love about her. And then, like we were saying, with like Hudson and his relatability. So I think there's somebody for everybody. Somebody even picked Burke, but it was more about just, having it be satisfying to watch him fuck around and find out that was their answer. But for most of it, it was about their relatability or what they wanted to be. And I think we've talked about that endlessly, but they were so fleshed out. They were real. They were characters that were real. They were given time. And a lot of it, yes, was that they had time to prepare with each other. They all kind of grew up in James Cameron's films together too, which I also think was a factor, right? These people have been in multiple films with each other. So I think we can't kind of discount that as being a factor too, which there's something to be said for that, like that sort of system where they grow up together in film. There's a familiarity there too. But overall, that was the consensus on characters. People put in a lot of lovely sentiments over these people, which was really nice to read.
One more thing I want to add from the movie that we went to for the 40th on PA is that when Ripley stepped into the egg chamber with the person next to me, like gasped because I guess they haven't seen the movie before, and that was such like a cool thing to hear when she was just like she saw the eggs and then it's like started slow panning towards like the queen. She was just like shocked, and I was like so jealous that she gets to watch that for like the first time because when I was like seeing bits and pieces from like age 4 to 6 of it always just being on TV. I would always catch the movie at like some random point. Like, and it could be the Queen scene by the time I'm starting the movie there, and then that's when I finish it. I'm like a 4-year-old just sitting on the floor, just like watching the TV. And to not be like if I was an adult now who just got to like put that movie on and just watch it start to finish, like that would be such a cool time. But it was just like hearing that gasp next to me in the theater and like all the other laughter points I thought was really cool. I also wanted to say how great it is to get aliens in something else. Like the scene, I think it's season 2 of Stranger Things when they go into like, I think the soldiers go into like the Upside Down, and they realize it's like a trap, and all of the like Demogorgons start like coming from. It's like okay, that's clearly like aliens and stuff like that. And then you also get things like Halo, where you get Sergeant Johnson and Abe Hone, or like you don't have Sergeant Johnson without Abe Hone. And like all the weapons like in the story, it just can spawn so many other things that become beloved afterwards that like take from aliens. And even Call of Duty has quotes. Like so many games now, I feel like were like in the early 2000s when I was growing up, like games that were coming out were all kids who grew up with that movie. And you see all like the Colonial Marines and spatial or soldiers, and you want to take that and put some of that in your games. So it's like it's always such a blast to see aliens show up in something else.
I just wanted to give a quick shout out during the movie theater, seeing it in a movie the other day. Everyone in PO, I think, thought the scene when Ripley and Hicks are running from the xenomorph into the elevator shaft, there's like a 4-second pause of silence. Everyone found it funny, like out of nowhere. I wasn't like expecting to laugh at that scene, but there's something about this like brief pause from all this chaos that everyone thought it was hilarious. Like there's okay. And then obviously it ensues with the door closing and gets right back to unfortunately Hicks getting burnt. But I do think there is, like I keep going back to, there's this joy in seeing this film and recognizing this shared humanity. Not that the others don't, they all do, but I think Aliens is a very dark film that makes people happy, and everyone forgets that it's dark because of how fun it is. But I do think that's a testament to the acting and the characters that are in this. But anyway, so this quick little thing that I remembered was that with the elevator scene, I didn't want to not say that. So yeah.
Yeah, because we've all been in an elevator. We're like, just close already.
Yes.
It was relatable. Yeah, for sure.
It's a great sequence. Something Mario made me think of was, in addition to like the kind of big references, like things like Halo, there's also so many trophies and achievements playing video games that are named for things from Alien or from Aliens rather. Like in Last of Us, there's a They Mostly Come at Night, mostly trophy. There's Game Over Man and Call of Duty, definitely other things as well. Not Bad for a Human is in Dead Space.
Game Over
Uh,
Man is
yeah, there's a
everywhere.
lot of Game Over
Like
Mans.
so many movies and shows and games. It's everywhere.
Yeah, there's references in like Demon's Souls games. Their Dark Souls games. There's references all over the place. And I guess what I kind of like about things like that is in addition to like the big kind of pop cultural things like the games and like the Simpsons episodes and the Family Guy jokes and stuff, there's also just these little things embedded within like the DNA of different things that get made where you just know like the developers had that in common. And like they were all sitting around, they're like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if we put like an acid for blood quote in a Bloodborne game? Like that would be so cool. Like the people will definitely get it. And we do. And I remember when that happened to Last of Us, we're like, oh my God, there's an alien reference in this. It's all over the place.
That made me think of Patrick. I knew I sent like a photo in like the chat we had, and it was I was playing Doom Dark Ages, and there's a shotgun upgrade, and it's called Eat This, and it's just like that's beautiful. Like when you're going through that,
That's
so
another
great
one.
to see. Yeah.
It's always like chef's kiss when you get those Easter eggs, and it just plays into that shared experience. You're like, oh my God, I know this, and the people who made this game that I love so much also know this. So it's just like establishing further that we're all a family, and we all relate to these people, and we were all affected by this movie in a way that's just indelible. It's not going away anytime soon. We share it with our kids. The kids talk about it with their friends, and like it's just like we keep saying it's special because it just is. There's no other word for it as like simple as that is. And it just makes me smile that going back to the Easter eggs, that it's just like a shared thing. It's like an inside joke among a big giant group of friends. And when you see it, you're like, oh my gosh, that's so cool that they know that too. And yeah, nerddom is phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah,
I
you
was
find it.
lucky. Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead. No, go.
I was lucky enough to be able to show Aliens to my son for the first time last year. And it's one of my favorite movie watching experiences I've ever had, just watching his reactions to it and everything. Like I've watched movies with him like a bunch of times, but he's always just kind of like laid back, like he'll fidget or maybe look on his phone for a minute, but he was standing 4 feet from the TV with his hands in his pockets. Like just staring at it. I've never seen him so locked in on something. And he was asking me questions about the characters and how the aliens work and stuff. And it was just it's one of my favorite experiences watching a movie I've ever had. It was so special. I love that so many of us have been able to do that and that we have that shared experience of, passing this down to our youngins.
Yeah, I took notes when I showed it for my kids the first time. Like, not the whole time, but I just like wrote down random things they asked or shared, and I still have that. It's like I have it tucked away, and I love it so much. But just going back to the other night, even before the movie, when we were all just having dinner, we were talking about how easy it is. I mean, we've talked obviously through the podcast, but um, like we immediately felt like we were friends, like that we'd known each other, right? Through this shared experience. It was like there was no awkward moment. We all hugged, we all said hello, we sat down. Anyone who heard us would have thought we were like lifelong friends. And one woman actually overheard us talking about a podcast and she came up. I thought she was specifically like hearing about aliens, but she was just intrigued that we were part of a podcast. It was almost like a celeb encounter. Like, she's like, you're in a podcast? What's it about? It kind of felt cool at the moment. Like we all kind of had this look of like, yeah, we're cool. But it was a fun shared experience. But it was so easy. Like we all just fell into conversation immediately. It was a lot of fun.
There's a comment in the YouTube chat From OJWH 1933 says, generally speaking, I struggle with military stories. I think the mentality of a soldier is so alien to my own experience that I struggle to relate. And I think what's interesting is generally I have similar issues with war films. I mean, there are certain war films that I love, like The Thin Red Line, which is more of a poetic kind of esoteric um, dive into war. But these characters and aliens don't feel like military characters to me. They just feel like people who have different, who approach life differently. Some have the confidence like Drake, some like Gorman who are unsure and incompetent, and then you have somebody like Hudson who is full of, you know, so many different things, sort of cockiness, sort of this, sort of that, but he's also this scared little boy. And then that comes out really, it's like the loudest voice. And he's a jokester, but he's not really a jokester. If anything, I feel like Hudson is this, he says things to cut the tension, you know. But again, with these characters, none of them feel like the military. I think they've been together so long as a platoon that they're just so comfortable with each other that they don't have that like steely, a few good men like quality that you see in like military people who are all uniformed and they don't move without permission. They don't pick up their gun without permission. These aren't those kinds of Marines. Or yeah, this isn't that kind of platoon. And I feel like I know them personally to, you know, a point that was made earlier when Hudson is taken out. I generally grieve for him. He feels like a brother. He feels like an uncle. He feels like a friend. And I don't at all experience aliens in through the veil of this is a military story. If anything, and this is something we've talked about quite a bit, and we've never really done a show on this before, but there's the whole reeling from the war in Vietnam, which is very evident in the characters that we see. And if you go and watch video or film of men and women in Vietnam at that time, you can see the similarities between the characters. You can see what James Cameron was writing with, I suppose, the different stories that were coming out, how in Vietnam, they would interview certain Marines or service people, and they'd all come at the opinion on the war with different, you know, it wasn't like this unified, oh yeah, we're here to do this. Some of them would be like, I don't know why we're here. We shouldn't be here. I saw this person kill a child. Why are we here? This is crazy. And you see that irreverence towards authority come out clearly in Aliens. Even in the beginning, when they're questioning Gorman, you see them all like, oh, what the fuck are we doing? Who is this guy? Because they're seasoned veterans. They know what they're doing, and clearly Gorman doesn't, which is a whole nother story. And if he was put in there because he was green, because they needed someone who didn't know what they were doing, that they could more control the narrative of what was going on in that mission. At any rate, yeah, I don't think that Aliens is necessarily even a war film, even though one of the titles or the taglines at the time was "This time it's war." I don't know if that's even true. I don't know so much if it was war, if it was more this time it's chaos, because it was chaos. What they even with all of their experience as Marines, it didn't matter. Newt said it. You know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who they are or their training. These things will destroy you. And she was right. But I love that I can experience Aliens not as a war film, but as something completely different, something of its own making.
I think part of that comes down to that the type of war film it is very different, right? Most war films are made in the style of like World War II, where there were very clear delineations between good and evil and allies and axis, and you know different fronts were very clear, and there were munitions and levels of artillery, and people had really clear hierarchies of like this is the chain of command, and we're going to there was obviously incalculable loss and chaos and carnage in something like World War II. But the way that it happened was very regimented, where it was like, we're going to invade with these ground forces, and we're expecting this many casualties, and this is how it's going to go and how it's going to proceed. Vietnam, of course, was just nothing like that because it was like so asynchronous and it was so decentralized, and there were no like real fronts There was no real clear chain of command once they got to the jungle because it was very unclear what was exactly happening and what the goals were and what the terrain was like. So like all these troops, were, and also they were kids, like these were people, they were literal teenagers getting sent over there, teenagers coming from a culture that, unlike the World Wars, was really not. They did not want to do this in the first place. Like it was a tremendously unpopular thing to send kids to, and then these kids got there and they were like, "What are we doing?" And then it was chaos. That in that vein, I do feel like Aliens feels like a war movie. It feels like a movie that speaks to that experience of these people being put in a situation that they really had no clue what they were up against, and they had, like, I mean, of course in Vietnam you look at images of soldiers and their armor and stuff, and they are all personalized, and everybody's like, smoking butts and listening to music and playing records and shit, and they brought guitars over, and it was a very different type of a war. And I love that Cameron kind of does justice to that. But he also does justice to the idea that, like, it does, when they get into into Hadley's Hope, it does feel like a war movie to me for a while, right? While they still have control over it, because they do squad formations and they have, they know who's doing what. And what's nice is Cameron gives the characters the latitude to be both, right? Like they can be goofy and individual and, quirky, but then like they are also professionals. And once they get on scene, like they know what they're doing. But the problem is what they know to do is not ultimately what will save them. But the last thing I want to say about that quickly is, Jamie, you were making me think about something I never really considered, which is their confidence, right? Like they do not seem at all to be afraid of their own mortality before this starts. Like they are joking around, they're having fun. And I think Cameron is telling us a lot about them because I think that they are used to being overpowered in every situation. Like they're incredibly well funded, they're well trained, they have everything they need, and they go on bug hunts. Like they get sent to just, quell small skirmishes with local wildlife, which shouldn't be a problem. So like when they get sent to another one, it's like, oh well, like let's have a good time on the way down. We'll make some jokes in the lander. We'll get down there, get in the APC, and we'll go like dust off. Maybe like find some colonist daughters. Which I do agree with some of the comments is the only line that's really aged poorly. Um, but and then we'll go have a fun time. We'll come back. It'll be great. And what happens is obviously completely different to that. And I think the last thing I'll say about this is it really mirrors the way that the United States especially was when we got involved in the Vietnam conflict, because we went in there thinking that we had superior firepower, and what we found was something very, very different. So yeah, it is. I mean, we kind of played it with doing a kind of a war movie examination of Aliens a lot over the years and talk to like historians about coming on. I think that'd be a really cool thing to do this year, to look at it in the context of war films, because it does feel like a unique one. It does not feel like, to your point, Jamie, like a traditional kind of war treatment, although I think it, in a lot of ways, is a really incisive one all on its own.
Should we look at hot takes?
I was just about to say
I was
that.
just going to say that too. Yeah,
Mario's always looking at hot takes.
Hot
I'm always
takes,
looking
go.
at
Yeah,
I can.
Mario,
I'll-
you get this.
I think just from what we were just talking about, the Marine. This is probably one of the hottest takes I have ever seen, actually. So I'll read this one.
Yeah.
This one's a bit brutal. I don't think I would even say this as a joke, but here we go. Most of the Marine characters have no value besides cannon fodder. Many of them have as much or less development than the crew from Prometheus or Covenant and are entirely forgettable. My God, I
Wow.
see. Yeah,
How do you really feel?
yeah. That one's got me a bit stunned. I think it's the entire opposite. And to what Jamie and Patrick were just saying, it's like the the camaraderie from all the Marines. Like we've all seen a military film where it seems like a forced sense of brotherhood. I don't know if anyone's seen the Doom Annihilation movie. I hope you haven't, because
Oh
it's
my God.
really not good at all.
Parlor.
But like it's such like a force, like we're this squad and like everyone's got their own thing going on. And it's just like especially if you're a huge Aliens fan, it's so terrible to see because like they did it so flawlessly, and just how everyone, like how they actually can work together, but Hudson is the jokester and Vasquez is badass. It's like you get that without actually saying that. So when you see a movie that does it poorly, it's hard. And then how many quotes we have to say that these characters are all forgettable. that's a bit brutal. I want to say this person may have seen the prequels before watching Aliens first. That's the only thing I could possibly think of.
Devil's advocate for that, though. Devil's advocate. I think
Okay.
when Aliens came out, film was still, I wouldn't call it new, obviously, but it was still something that was still being explored. I mean, the 80s are a watershed moment for the effects and lots of fantasy and things that were pushing the envelope. And I think at this point, if you're seeing Aliens, there are so many films that have copied Aliens, that have copied some of the dialogue, the characterizations. I could imagine seeing Aliens now. You're like, okay, because you've seen it before. You've seen different versions of it, and I still think that hot take is bullshit, and you don't know character. But I would imagine that things don't hit with audiences the way they did in the 80s and even the 90s. Films were still exciting. They were still like it was like a religion. You had to go to the movie theater. You didn't have streaming unless you had cable. And even still, not all households could afford that. So you were going to a theater, you're paying your money, and you were in a dark theater and everyone was quiet, and you're experiencing something in a way that people do not experience films these days, unless, we have films like Obsession or The Odyssey, which is amazing. But yeah, so I can imagine that take. I can imagine someone having that take with what is available to watch these days.
I kind of have a cool hot take, I think. Someone says the premise of Weyland terraforming on the planet was stupid. They knew there was a derelict there. They knew it had xenomorphs there by Ash's reports in the first movie. They would have milked that derelict from the Nostromo's MIA forward, making a huge offsite research space station and an on-site paramilitary HQ. So basically, they're just saying, like, why didn't Weyland just go in and do what they needed to do kind of immediately after the Nostromo went offline? Interesting. I never thought of it that way. Like, they know it's there. Why don't they just go get what they want? It would be
Because
extra.
Hadley's Hope was an experiment, I think.
Yeah.
Of course they knew. They put all those people there on purpose.
Yeah.
I think it's too that we've talked
I
about a few
know.
times, to where like there can be so much uncommunication within a company, and how big Weyland-Yutani is, to the fact that like the Ashes reports, and like only probably a few people knew about that derelict and whether or not they had died in that amount of time, or there was just only a few handful of people, and then the terraforming squad was like, okay, we'll go here and do that. And it wasn't till Burke heard that there could be a ship there from Ripley coming out of cryo, that he sent someone there. So I think it's almost entirely possible that Weyland-Yutani is unorganized, to the fact where the terraforming squad had absolutely no idea that that ship was there. But I mean, I could see that point as well.
Yeah,
I
it's
I
cool
think
that
to
it could be
Mario's
either way.
point, I think there's absolutely different, cadres within Weyland that know different things. And I think that the ones that are higher up are the ones who are actually interested in the creature and are kind of manipulating things lower down, so that they make it look like the company's establishing a terraforming colony, but they're really not. And because Weyland has infinite resources, they can do all this terraforming and shit, and not just send a ship there to like crash land and get infected. Like, they want to have a sustainable population of the creature. So they're going to like create an environment where people can propagate, and they can be settled in, and they can have like infrastructure to the point where they can build like a civilization out a little bit, and then they want to like turn that civilization into like a sustainable alien hive. So I definitely think, but I think that people at like, below Burke's level, I don't think they have any idea that any of that's happening. I think it's like people that are
Yeah.
pretty high up.
I've always kind of
Nice.
figured Burke was like the bottom rung of the corporate ladder. Like, he's corporate, but he's like a floor manager kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And it could be that,
Glorified
like,
manager.
to something that Alex White has mentioned many times, it could be that Burke knows, quote unquote, that this is like a bioweapons division thing, but that's not even actually why they want the creature. They want the creature to study its biology, to be able to create technologies from it, whether that's for extending life, be more resilient in interplanetary environments that are not, amenable to human constitution. Like, it could be the sort of thing where like the people, as you get higher up in the company, there's a more crystallized idea of like why they want the creature in the first place. But an easy one to sell it as is, oh, let's get it so it's a weapon, right? Because people can kind of understand like, oh, we want to like have the ability to like wage war, when maybe that's not even what really the company wants out of it at that point in the company's history. Maybe they want something more. And they're kind of like, there's layers of secrecy all the way down so that when you get to Burke's level, it's like, oh, we need them because they're guns. But when you go above Burke's level, you're like, we need them because they can incubate and sustain life.
Mm.
I have another pretty good one I can read for hot takes. We have Bishop was not a good guy / hero. He may have come back to pick up Ripley and Newt, but there's too many inconsistencies in his information he provides, or conveniently leaves out of any discussion. That firmly suggests that he's a kinder, gentler Ash. That's a hot take, but not entirely outlandish either. I mean, that's very believable.
Goes back to why is the egg on the Sulaco? I mean, I don't think Bishop did it, but I think you could see the suggestion that he is, the obsessive scientist and synthetic scientist, with the xenomorph. Another crazy one I saw that stood out was actually, do you want to talk about the whole Bishop thing really quick? I want to cut off from that. I realize.
I mean,
Here's my hot take on.
Oh,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Jamie.
No, I was just going to say, I think Bishop, like Joy from Blade Runner 2049, just because he's telling what you want to hear, doesn't mean that he's not being operated in an insidious manner. Whoever's operating him or controls him is the one in control. Just because he's hitting all the right notes for us does not mean that he's a good guy. And I'm not saying he wasn't in the film. I don't think there was anything nefarious. But we don't know if he could have brought an egg on board. He could have, but we don't know.
I've found on my most recent rewatch that I am increasingly distrusting of Bishop because of current events and all the AI shit. Like as like the world around me changes and my opinion on technology changes, like I kind of get a little bit colder towards Bishop. I don't know.
I mean, dissecting the facehugger, he does look very suspicious. And I know that was part of the film of coming off of Ash to make it look like you're not sure which way Bishop is going to go, where and instead he ends up saving Ripley at the end. But like you said, Jamie, just because he's saying and doing all of the right things in front of everybody doesn't mean he has the right intentions.
Maybe he was programmed to save her just because she would be an incubator,
What better to give Ripley the kind of like the antithesis of Ash? Let's send someone that Ripley can trust eventually, like what better way to get closer to her and to undermine her? Not to say that Bishop undermined her, but yeah, it's interesting. I think it was, I honestly still think that James Cameron wrote Bishop to be a good droid. I think what we see on his face is who he is, but I think the door is open there to wonder about what else was going on, sort of in his programming.
Absolutely, yeah. But I do agree with you that I think the film wasn't really intended to do that, but it's interesting to watch it now through that lens, and it still holds up great,
Yeah. And as a counterpoint, like the opposite kind of, as many hot takes are, Burke's not really a bad guy. He's just a normal guy. So there's interesting sort of switch on those two characters. One of them thinks he's kind of cute. Sorry, that that one made me laugh out loud.
He's really an okay guy,
He's an okay guy. I think he's kind of cute too. I just liked the sorry in parentheses. Yeah,
he is. He's a sweetheart.
But I love the apology for it after. But yeah,
sorry.
Sorry. One of them says Burke didn't start out evil. He made a bad call and got too far into his own bullshit to get out, so he had to double down. But I don't think his original intention was that he really wasn't a bad guy.
It was.
I mean, when you see him messing with the security monitors and stuff, he's very nervous about it. Like he looks conflicted.
I think Patrick, in another episode, you mentioned about I can't even remember the full conversation, but we were talking about evil and things like that. Everyone, even people on the wrong side of history, don't think they're doing the wrong thing. Burke thinks he's doing the right thing. Burke is serving the higher ups. He's doing what he thinks is right. So I can see how, but I don't think Burke was who we were seeing was who we were seeing. I think he was much like Bishop. Well, maybe like Bishop. He was saying all the right things, but we knew he had a plan. We knew that there were things going on, on in him him turning off the monitors for Ripley and Newt, I mean, for lack of better terms, how evil can you get? That was clearly someone who did not value human life, and you can see his sociopathy in his eyes. He had dead eyes at that point, where he was just out for himself. Yeah, to not see him as a bad guy, I don't know. You might want to have a personal conversation with yourself.
Any more hot takes?
I got a crazy one. The Where was it? Ripley let her emotions get the best of her with Newt after leaving the Marines to be cocooned and impregnated. Like, she goes back to the hive later to save Newt. Could we have done that with Apone and Diedrich, I think, and whoever else? I don't but interesting idea there.
Let me guess, a man wrote that.
Probably.
Yeah,
Probably.
if going
I
back to
don't agree
save a
with it.
child from
Yeah.
danger is letting your emotions get the best of you, then like
Yeah.
you
We're
have to
fucked.
examine something
Yeah.
within yourself.
Yeah, this is really bad. That was a pretty insidious one. For sure.
That's why we have emotions, to
Right.
protect our kids.
100%.
Right. Yes. Crazy. But I definitely think, questioning why she was doing these things, is valid, but I don't think that this question is valid whatsoever. I just think it definitely throws a, what's the right word? Flame into the can of gasoline, if you will.
I think you've read a different, because I'm seeing one here that's super similar. I'll read that one now too. I feel like I don't think this is the same one you just read, because it didn't say anything in emotion. I feel like going back for Newt was the wrong decision to make. The likelihood she was not infected was slim to none. Being a parent, I would have wanted to go back, but I know, or I would have known it was too late. So I think that's a different take on the same question. I think when you look at it that way, when it's worded a little bit different, because I mean, she does say right away when they're in the APC for the Marines, is like, they also just got taken, and they were closer at the time too, when she was like, you're too late, they're already being cocooned. And I think it really comes down to who were you willing to save. Like, if there could be 50 people down there and you have a chance to go save them, it's like, I'm not going down there. But if it's like your significant other, your child, you're like, I'm not gonna like, there is no option but going to see if they're alive, versus someone that you don't have that kind of relationship with. There's like, well, they're fucked. I'm not going to risk my life when there's a slim to no chance, versus there's no way I could live the rest of my life without knowing that for sure, to see if I can save them or not. So I see in that sense. And she had just met Newt too, so I can kind of see where someone could come from in that regard. And if you're
Maybe.
Hicks too, though, like, would you want Ripley? Like, you just met Newt. Hicks doesn't have the same relationship to Newt that Ripley does, and he just saw all of his other Marines die. So him being bent up or bent out of shape, what's the chances that Ripley does go get her and then come back to the dropship? So I could almost see where someone could come at it from that angle.
I guess, but I just think children are a whole different animal, and I think that motherly, fatherly, parental instinct that is in all of us, at least all the good people that I know, would. I think she would have retrieved her body, whether it was just a body or if it was her impregnated with a chest burster. I think that's that gene, that thing that clicks on in us that say, we have to save these children. We have to do it. I think if any of us, anybody, that sounds like something. I mean, I have no children, but I have 4 nephews, one of whom I'm really close to, who's like my own child. And I would do the same thing. And I feel like that kind of, I don't know, that kind of comment to me almost sounds heartless, like it was the wrong, I don't know. But we're all different people. Hey, we all come from different backgrounds with different ideas of what's wrong and what's right. But I also know that what's wrong and what's right, or in terms of, in a situation like that, there is no wrong and right. You have to do what you think is the best. There's not a wrong decision and a right decision. And unless we're faced with that, you don't know what you're going to do. And we've talked about this in relation to like that HBO show, The Last of Us, what the wrong and the right decision was for Joel. And Ripley and Joel are similar people,
I think there's a much bigger picture around it too. It's just like the protection and saving of the innocence of the world. Like, children hold we all hold that as kids, and you have this lesser understanding of corporations and the war and things like that. And so there's this idea and this theme, I think, to protect the innocence of children, to which would hopefully bring about like this change, right? Or this, that Newt would be someone to um make the world a better place, or be able to like survive and overcome what Ripley and these adults are ultimately going through and experiencing, especially with what Ripley experiences in Alien, right? With the company just completely screwing them all over, um, to acquire this thing for, capitalist, um, corporation, money making, whatever. And so I think as you look at even relevant to today and how our society is, I think that's even more crucial than ever, really. And so it is very, yeah, it's a hot take for sure. That's crazy. But to not understand that I think is the idea behind that, right? And that's why it's so gutting in Alien 3 when Newt doesn't survive and Ripley then has to make the choices that she makes in that film to ultimately try to save the world. I think trying to save Newt outside of her motherly way that she felt about it and everything Ripley had gone through with losing her own child and things like that, obviously plays a huge role. But I think and would maybe hope at the end of the day that Hurd and Cameron were trying to touch on a little bit of that, right? Like protecting the innocence of the world, because then hopefully someday that innocence will, sort of revitalize the goodness, morally, ethically, all of those things that you can think about, right? Which is just another crazy aspect to Aliens, to that you very much think about when you're older, right? And you experience and have the wisdom to understand that you lose that innocence as you grow, and to present that in such a way is just so elevated, right? For storytelling, I think, which is just another really great piece to it. So I'm happy that those people threw those hot takes in there, because it allows us to have a conversation like this to hopefully help people understand and realize like why that decision was made. Um,
Well, I
hopefully.
think Poop Vane actually put it really beautifully. When you love something enough, you become fearless. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what that moment is achieving there when she decides to go back and crystallizes her becoming the iconic hero that she actually is. But yeah, it's fascinating how like all of us just immediately reacted to that hot take too. Like, wait, what do you mean? Like, obviously they're gonna go back to save the child because that is what you do. Similarly with The Last of
Yeah.
Us, like you just that's what you do. And it's interesting that we all have our idea of what we think we would do in the situation too. And it's fascinating that this movie just like puts it out there. Like, here it is. So.
Yeah. And it
If I
sets
can
up
throw,
like the biggest arc of the film, like just like act of the film, right? Like that's if Ripley was like, "All right, fuck Newt, let's just get out of here," then the movie would have sucked, man.
Can you
It would have
imagine
just
that
been
ending?
like,
That would have been
"What?"
God.
She's like,
Like
bye.
they just bow, they just
she's like,
leave.
who?
Deuces.
Yeah. Meets the
Yeah.
queen. There's no
I
scene.
will,
Yeah. Oh.
like, I know we need to wrap, but I'll say this. I think, as I just something that I thought of, we're in an age right now where um, people are preaching against empathy, that empathy is weak. And I think some of these things that I'm reading are from people who believe that empathy is weakness. And if you believe that empathy is weakness, then absolutely Ripley did the wrong thing. And other people, and work wasn't that bad. And I think Ripley and so many other characters in the saga, and certainly in Aliens, you can feel their empathy. You can see it. You can see it in Hudson. You can see it in Hicks. One of Hicks' best qualities is his empathy. That's what makes him a strong leader. That's what makes Ripley a strong leader. And I don't think empathy right now is that popular. So that makes sense to me that we would read those types of responses.
Yeah, we just don't have many good examples of it in real life. And I think that's coloring how people see it. And yeah, the only hope I can say is that at least they knew they were hot takes. You know what I mean?
That's what I was going to say. Like, this was in the hot take section. This was like, this was not
preaching anything as to be correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad people are putting it out there. I'm glad people are saying things out loud, because it's important to be honest, because then you can have conversations about it. So like I was, although I disagree like with everything I have with that, I'm glad to see it, because it means we can actually like talk and kind of understand more where the people are coming from and like have a dialogue. So, again, like for those of you who wrote in with takes that you might be getting lambasted tonight, we are grateful that you.
We all asked for these hot takes, and now
we did.
And now how dare you?
Why would you give us a hot take in the first place?
Oh my gosh!
A full hot take episode throughout the whole franchise, I think. Would be
I'm down for it. Yeah,
piss us off even more.
Yeah, give us more ammo.
Give us the ultimate shit show Patreon.
Hot take per film.
Yeah,
hot take per film.
Perfect.
Yeah, I just wanted to go on record. Since I'm the one who really opened all of this, I do not agree with this hot take.
We thought you did. We were sure that you did.
I know, but it's like I'm the one who started. I realized, that theoretically opened this entire dialogue for this, especially regarding morals and ethics. But no, I do not agree with this whatsoever. And Andy, you said a really good comment before. It's like we have more Burkes than Hicks and Ripley's in the world, or Ripley's and Hicks, if you will. And I don't think that's not untrue. It is immensely true. We have more of, people that are more concerned about, capitalistic gain than empathy. So that's, that's for sure what we're seeing in this wonderful time in society. But yes,
that's why Aliens. But that's why Aliens is more important than it's ever been,
Right.
And I think that's why so many of us cling to it. And I think going back to my very first comment, like that's part of why these qualities of Aliens film of 80s films are no longer looked at as being pejorative ideas now. Like they're things that they gave us a sense of like moral compass. They gave us a beacon to go towards. They gave us an idea of like humans are capable of doing good things together if we just literally, like Aliens is the triumph of like humans over capitalism. It's the triumph of people over corporations. Like that's and what we have today in the real world is a daily reminder that that's not what's actually happening, and an increasing sense that it might be almost impossible to do that. And I think when we see things like Aliens, it gives us hope that we can. It gives us hope that we can come together. And I hope that people, take advantage of this 40th anniversary moment to go back and rewatch it and maybe interrogate in their own lives the strength of the women that they know, interrogate in their own lives the choices that they make that maybe are more for corporate gains than human gains, that interrogate in their own lives the kind of messaging that they are helping to sow and spread throughout the world. And maybe if perhaps the world could be aided by messages of hope more now even than perhaps in the 1980s when we felt a little differently about things. It's a great film, and it's one that we're going to be talking about for the rest of the year. As we kind of come to a closer, I want to do a quick shout out to our producers, and also just to thank everyone for joining. This is a long episode, but obviously it could keep going, and I'm sure we'll do like a part 2 to this at some point this year. And a huge thanks to Andy for getting all those questions together, and a huge thanks to everyone who wrote in. I mean, there are pages and pages and pages of amazing insights, audio things that you're going to be hearing, I believe, at this point in the episode after we wrap. There's amazing stuff, and like Andy said, we're going to try to find more uses for it, because it's worth kind of memorializing these. And lastly, thank you also for your hot takes, even if we disagree with them, because again, it's good to talk things through. And if we live in a time where we can talk together, we live in a time where we can grow together. So let's do a quick shout out to our producers. We got Nathan Gribble, Darren Gold, Murray Kucherawi, Jonas Holmston, David Holmes, Dave Turner, G. McDonald, Perry Chicos, Matthew Bruff, Carl McLean, Joseph Rosner, Blood Hut, Steve Patterson, G. Latoria Yates, Arnold Quigley, Ross Yost, Pop Cycled, Jeff DeLoff, Carl Hinkst, Chris B., Jeremiah White, Andrew, Peter from Melbourne, Gary Smith, Angel Cruz, Weyland-Yutani, Distinguished Engineer, Lazy Pancreas, Brazen God, Sky Errant, Jordan, Derek, Eric Poop Vein Stevens,
Woo.
Ali Cara, Matt Thomas, Andrew Tracy, and Larry Wood. Thank you all so much. If you want to join them, go to perfectorganism.com/support. We love you guys.
Yeah.
We love
Thank you
aliens.
so much. You're the main.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you guys for being here.
Thanks everybody, and thanks
Bye,
for
everybody.
writing in all of
See you
the
guys.
answers.